Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studio inside Max 6 Workspace and the Conscious Capitalism Arizona headquarters here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. I'm your host and Business RadioX ambassador, Kendra Maples. Today, we're going to mix things up a little bit today. We have some amazing guests in the room, but we also have a guest host. So Kelly Lorenzen, who normally hosts her own show, Collaborative Connections, is actually going to help co-host a little bit today. But I feel like we're not going to have to guide the conversation too much. These ladies are pretty phenomenal and have a lot to share. So we have Karianna Blanchard. She's advocate and board member of Parents for Suicide Prevention. We have Julie Gustafson, trauma mentor with JMG Consulting, and Karen Nowicki, CEO and owner of this Phoenix Business RadioX studio. But we have her in a guest seat today instead of in the host seat. So with that being said, I'm going to have the ladies introduce themselves, and that will kind of start this conversation around mental health and suicide awareness. So Karianna, I'm going to start with you.
Hi, thanks so much for the opportunity that we have to be here and talk about suicide prevention. I've been a part of suicide prevention and the advocacy for it for a few years now. When I was early childhood director for a church, we lost one of our middle school students. And it really began to open up the questions as to what is causing, what are we doing, what are we missing, especially when a child falls into the quote unquote typical child has everything. There shouldn't be any reason for this sort of, not trauma, but this sort of desperation. So with that, I started to learn as much as I could and started out with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and did some training there and was on the board with them for Hope and Healing. Started to really see that in order for change to happen, you really have to start in your own community. It's such a big issue, suicide is, and it affects anybody and everybody, even those that look on the outside like they've got it all together and it's all running fine. And there were so many stigmas out there. There were so many places where, as a mom, I assumed that there was training in place for our kids and for those who help our kids. And through this, started to learn that there is not what we thought there was. Actually, a group of us moms got together in 2017 and started the Mitch Legacy Parents for Suicide Prevention in honor of Mitch Warnock. We lost him. He was a student at Corona del Sol High School. And he's always been the focus for us. And then as that focus began to turn on to what are our schools doing? Are our teachers equipped for what our kids are dealing with? Are our families equipped? Starting, like I said, from a church angle and losing one of our kids, what is the church missing? And to see how we really have to bring our communities back together to show that we are here for each other and here for one another has been eye-opening and also kind of sad and sickening on other realms. We reached out to Parents for Suicide Prevention, reached out to Senator Bowie, and he formed the Mitch Warnock Act. And the first time in session, it didn't pass. It didn't even get heard. And then the second session, second time it went through, was last year, legislative season, and it passed. And I think part of that is because it was becoming real to everyone that this is a big problem and we need to start. We're not going to guarantee that we're not going to lose anybody else by suicide, but we got to know darn well that we have shored up the holes in the boat. And so for us as moms, we wanted to see that all school personnel from the top all the way to the newest entry in there is getting suicide prevention training. And it's not to walk a child through the journey. It's not to walk a teacher through the journey. If you are suicidal, it is to say something is not the right way. Something is not like it was yesterday. And we are going to take you to the next step and you're going to be okay. And we're going to find hope and we're going to find it together. And so I think once everybody realized that we weren't asking teachers to fix this, that we were saying, hey, we're going to give you permission to see it. And bus drivers, we're going to give you permission to see it. And the only people that are going to benefit are our kids and their community and their parents. Me, on a personal level, my goal has always been to reconnect our schools and our families. About 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we started down this path of not trusting one another. And the only ones that have hurt are our kids, because our kids are not able to see. Sometimes it's worked out great and they do see that they have a partnership. But on the whole, parents and teachers have not seen that really we can disagree as grownups, but is it actually going to help our kids? Because if it's not, then we need to pull ourselves back and we need to fix this. So Parents for Suicide Prevention has been, that's been our goal. And so with legislation passed, this last year, we decided to do door hangers. And our original goal was 1,000. And it was just simple. It just was one-sided, and it just had signs to look out for and ways to reach out. And we had an article in the Warner Wrangler and some other local newspapers, and we ended up with 11,000 being handed out.
Wow. Oh, that's so amazing.
So that just showed to us that people want something they can do.
Mm-hmm.
So what can we do? I always say, Google free suicide prevention trainings in my area. They are everywhere. I can't tell you how many trainings I have gone to on all sorts of different levels, a 4-hour one, a 2-day one. You can find it, and it can be free.
That's great.
So,
wow, that's great to know for everybody.
Yeah, I like
everybody needs to know that. Thank you for sharing.
You betcha.
Julie,
Julie?
let's go to you.
So I'm very grateful to be here today. It's very exciting. My journey started back in about 2000. I always was a person who was very happy, a pleaser. I loved everyone, felt like everyone loved me. Everything was good. After the birth of my third child, I started to have these weird, like physical manifestations that would come up, like the floor would drop out from under me, or, well, that was the main one, was the floor dropping out from under me. And I didn't really think too much of it because I had never had any cause for alarm. And then just over the next several years, I was paying attention to those things and also paying attention to the stress that I felt and how I dealt with stress, and kind of realized that I wasn't doing so well. I thought I did, but I was really feeling that something wasn't quite right. So I looked into ways of dealing with stress. I did remember times in my life where I I remember out of high school, moving away from my family, and when things felt overwhelming, I remember actually thinking about taking my own life because I felt like I couldn't deal. There was no solution. And for some reason, that was just like a natural thought. Like, well, yeah, that's what you do. You just do that. And I never realized that was a problem until in 2010, my youngest brother actually did take his life. And he was in his 30s. It did find himself in a situation where he just felt he couldn't fix his life or the situations in front of him. And he did take his life. And it really hit me very, very hard. And I began to start to feel like inside myself and in my thoughts, and kind of like this very fearful feeling like, wait, I've actually had these thoughts. But I never really thought I would really do it. I just had these thoughts. And then we have a family friend who's actually a trauma mentor. His name is Wayne Johnson. And so my mom said, maybe it would be good for you to go and meet with Wayne, and was open to that because I felt a little out of control and maybe not able to like pull all my thoughts together. And for someone who thought I was pretty in control of things, that was a little scary. So I did see him, and I realized that I had a lot of trauma. That, we always think trauma is just death or an accident or childhood rape or molest or abuse. But I found that trauma can actually be as simple as you were dropped off at kindergarten, and that was very traumatic for you, and that shock just sat right there in your system. So as I started the trauma work, my anxiety grew immensely. It wasn't an easy road, but very worthwhile. And I was able to kind of unwrap all of those, pieces of myself that were creating these feelings that I was having, this anxiety, this hopelessness, depression, things that were very foreign to me that I had really never felt before. After completing the process, which I completed a huge section of it, but as I've learned that our bodies, like we have a spirit and a body, and our spirit is our perfect self. And my spirit, whatever our spirit can handle at the time, is what we address, right? So after I had worked through things, I was feeling amazing. No more anxiety, no more depression. Julie was feeling good and back to life and running around and coping with life as we all do. And about a year later, once again, I started to feel anxiety. And I thought, well, what, all that work and it didn't work. So I went back to Wayne and he said, well, now it's time to go to the next level. And so it was very simple because I had been through such a long process and I loved the process. Regressive therapy, inner child work. I loved it. It was something very simple for me to understand. And I was able to relax into the state that I needed to for those things to come forward. And I loved it. And after I had really, again, come to a really good place, Wayne asked me if I would, because he could tell how much I enjoyed it and actually how well it worked for me. He said, I would love to teach you. And so I did an internship with him. This was probably a year and a half after. It takes a while to really recover after opening up all your trauma. So about a year and a half after, I called him and said, okay, I think maybe I'm ready to talk to you about learning some trauma work. And so, or learning your process. And so I did a 9-month internship with Wayne, and it was phenomenal. I'm so grateful for the clients that allowed me to be in their sessions and learn from them. I was in sessions from child death to suicide, accidents, and, marriage breakups and different things. And I learned so much. And you realize just how much people hold on to and that it does manifest itself. Mm-hmm. And so as I've started my own practice, you kind of come up with your own ways of doing things. And so I do the work that I was taught, the verbiage and the process is the same. However, I either do the more circular breathing hypnosis angle, or I do a body love angle, which is a little less invasive and less scary. And I found that most of my clients really, really love it, especially children and teenagers. And so that's what I do. And it's just so great. And I'm so grateful to be here. So thank you.
Great introduction. My turn?
Your turn.
Okay. So,
Karen.
Yes, Karen. We're in my house today, one of my homes. So I would like to, like Julie did, kind of go back to when I became a parent in 94 and 96 with my oldest two kiddos who are now in their mid-20s. I thought that I had a handle on myself emotionally and physically and mentally, and I fell into postpartum depression. And, I was the kind of mom who, especially with my first kiddo, Grady, read every book on pregnancy, front to back, minus the chapter on postpartum depression, because I'd look at it and I'd go, yeah, that's not me. Not out of offense or lack of respect for anybody else who might be dealing with depression. But at the time, I thought I've done enough self-growth work and been, really present with myself that I won't experience that. Ha, 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 ha. I remember driving to, I guess it was a post appointment with my OBGYN. And as I'm driving, I'm listening to the radio, and a commercial came on, and they were talking about postpartum depression. And they were describing the symptoms and the things that were happening. For me, one of the symptoms was, late night feeding my newborn as a new mom and having visions of harming him. And it was so frightening and so scary. Never acted on it, but just the idea that the visions would just come, and they were graphic and horrifying. And I felt guilty and shameful and awful about it. And my husband at the time, I now am in a different marriage, but my first husband, when I told him about it during the day, he's like, this is the time you're supposed to be the happiest in your life. I don't understand why you're not. And I'm like, well, he's right. I should be happy. And what's wrong with me, right? So I'm driving to the appointment. I'm listening to this commercial. I find myself pulling into the parking lot and I'm bawling because I realize that this is a serious, serious issue. And I have to get a handle on it. So I was medicated for a little bit, seemed to get better, take the edge off. And fast forward 2 years later, I'm pregnant a second time with our now 23-year-old, and I have postpartum again. And I'm a little bit more skilled at handling it. I chose not to medicate that time, but I was in therapy and continue to be in therapy with a counselor, an amazing woman here locally, Donna Didi, phenomenal. And I found my way to eventually Debbie Ford, who is a shadow coach. I went to then, like Julie was describing, I was so amazed by the process around owning your shadow and inner child work and really just standing in the power and presence of decision-making and who we are and how our life experiences, trauma and or otherwise, relationships, you name it, can impact us negatively or positively. And we have control to decide how we want to move forward with those experiences, trauma as well. And so I ended up getting certified as an integrative coach professional. I ended up training thousands of coaches all over the world through John F. Kennedy University's institute when we were housed out of that institute. And so, that was early 90s. Dale and I, my ex-husband and I, chose to divorce. And fast forward to my life with Mike, my current husband. We've been together for 15 years. Karianna and I actually are neighbors. Our oldest kiddos went to school together. And we've had a lot of beautiful conversations around this kind of stuff together. It's interesting because we didn't know each other really well when Madison and Aspen were they in Girl Scouts together?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So we kind of knew each other.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I feel like there was a Suicide Prevention Week, and I can't remember how you and I got connected, but you were coordinating it a couple years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Was it that long?
Yeah, it could have been a walk.
And yeah. Well, actually, it was at the church near Corona, and you asked me to speak. And so I came and I did some of this, interpersonal growth work, shadow work, and some Tao tapping and helping people overcome some anxiety and panicking. And we've had a lot of conversations about our kids and the anxiety and the panic and the challenges that they've had. And I've always gone to Karianna and say, listen, pray for us or pray for so-and-so. And I've done the same for her. Back on October 28th of 2019, just 11 weeks ago, my husband attempted suicide and survived. Kendra and Kelly and our friend Lori, along with Karianna and several other people thousands of people have rallied around us to offer prayer and compassion and respect and help not only me navigate through this new normal, but also to be there for Mike so that he can have a full restoration. So I've been anticipating this segment today with everybody. When we first talked about it, which has been maybe 4-6 weeks ago, I was like, yes, I was journaling a lot on our Caring Bridge page. I was very vocal and very kind of having downloads through spirit and just writing a lot. And then when Mike was out of TICU, he was in Chandler Regional Hospital for 4 weeks and then went into a post-acute facility to heal the physical body, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech. And I knew at some point in his journey of recovery, we'd have to get to the psychological and the emotional wellness piece. And there's a whole lot of other aspects around this, but it's not for today's conversation. But the last 4 weeks, I've kind of gone inward. I've struggled. I've really struggled. Mike's doing well. He's now actively participating in therapy. It's a long road. And this is somebody, of course, I love him dearly. He was not on the radar. I am an integrative coach. I'm highly trained. I work with high-level professionals here in the Valley, politicians, doctors, attorneys, who have been dealing with some of these types of feelings, trauma themselves, and wanting to shift and change. Everything from 16-year-old kids on up through folks who are in their 70s. I've had the pleasure of working with. But Mike's difficulties and struggles went unspoken to. Even though I knew he was struggling, it manifested itself more physically than anything else. And so here we are, and this is fresh, right? We're still in it. And he survived. Like, that's a whole unique category. It's one category to be somebody who has experienced a close relationship, like Julie with her brother, and you as a family friend it's Mitch, right? Mm-hmm. That's one category. Another category, even a smaller club that no one wants to be a part of, is the family of somebody who's survived a suicide. And so with that, that's my introduction. But given that this Phoenix Business RadioX and Business RadioX network overall is around making a difference in the lives of people and leadership, we really felt like, Kendra and Kelly and Lori and I, it was critical that we have this conversation candidly and openly and come to folks who are making a difference in the lives of others and see if we can, help more people, to both of your points.
And heighten the awareness, right? The awareness is not there. And so the more we talk about it, the more it's in people's minds, the more tools, I say, in our tool belt that we can have to help people. And I'm a helper. I want to help everybody. And Kendra came to me and said, we need to do something for Karen. Well, I'm like, I'm struggling because I don't know how to help, because I need to help somehow. So we decided to come up with an event to bring awareness to mental health, to suicide prevention. Let's have an event. Let's have a panel. Let's have people come together and talk about it, of course, in honor of the Nowicki family. And because you're so open, Karen, to have those conversations, because they need to be heard. They need people to talk about, the statistics. I mean, it's scary, and it's an epidemic, and we're talking a lot about the kid suicide, but we're not talking about the men who, and females, but a lot of adult men are struggling, and they're not talking about it. They weren't raised to talk about it. They were raised to keep quiet. And so we need to talk about not only the kids, but the adults, to go through trauma mentoring, to actually heal all those past traumas so they can prevent it.
And to Julie's point earlier, and I really appreciate you sharing that and kind of giving some context around what trauma is. When we think of trauma, we often think that it is those biggies. The parents got a divorce, you moved and you lost all your friends, or you were molested or abused. Yes, those are obviously traumatic experiences, and for many people, repeated over, years and years, reliving those experiences. But I agree, trauma is in the smallest of things, depending on how our soul and our body and our mind take that in at that time. And it's interesting. We've had here at Business RadioX a couple of conversations previously that I had the benefit of hosting around trauma-informed workplaces. And so we're coming at this at all angles today in our conversation. So for those of you listening, obviously get out of this what you can. And we hope that you become a voice and an advocate for somebody in your life, and begin talking and speaking to your own experience as well. But here at Business RadioX, our goal, to Kelly's point, is to make sure that we start to take away the taboo-ness. Is that a word? Taboo-ness?
It is now.
that we can have these conversations, men, women, children. I've got a 12-year-old at home, and Mike isn't back home with us yet, and it's been 11 weeks. We're trying to find our way through this. My 25-year-old moved back at home with us, and every day I wake up and I feel like, gosh, yes, this is my new normal. And while there have been thousands of blessings in this, I've been very blessed and very divinely led throughout this whole experience. It still fucking sucks.
Yes. It's funny. I sit here and I think of so many examples of what you're talking about. The main thing that I think of is that I'm always the heroes are the wives, the mothers, the fathers who actually see the signs, right? You have a 5-year-old and they're not going to sleep at night, or I'm anxious, or, and you kind of poo-poo it, kind of put it away like, well, everybody gets anxious and everybody gets scared and everybody gets this, right? And kind of push it away. Right. Very much normalize it. Or a husband, right? Like sometimes it's like, well, he's just talking again, or whatever. But I have wives who literally will get a hold of me and they're like, I know my husband needs to come and see you. I'm like, okay. And they come and most will say, well, I don't have any trauma. Most people think they don't have any trauma.
Right.
And I can pretty much guarantee that every single person has some sort of trauma. And it's interesting because if you just listen to people, a lot of times they'll tell you their trauma over and over and over again. Like, oh my gosh, I was young and this happened, but I'm over it, is always what they say. And I just go, okay, But then as we get into the trauma and we're able to relax and allow ourselves to release pain and suffering and these, I guess I like the words, these little children inside us. I'm Julie and I think I'm 46. I'm never going to remember. But I had a 3-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 6-year-old that, at different times something happened. And whenever something in my life came up, it triggered that little child inside me. And guess who took over? The 3-year-old, the 12-year-old.
Yeah. I love that you say that. It's one of the things that I share with clients frequently when they're dealing with a struggle in their relationship, their marriage, or with a child or a client or whatever. I will help them realize there's a difference between their chronological age and their emotional age.
Oh, yes.
And until you've done work, and again, to Julie's point, the work is never done. As long as we're here on this earth, we're still going to continue to find new layers. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You've got to keep looking at, oh, this is new. Like I've got some mom issues. And every once in a while, I'm like, dang it. I thought I had all those under wraps, but something else triggered it, right? But the difference between a chronological age and emotional age is chronologically, I'm 55. But emotionally, depending on where trauma happened in my life, if I haven't healed that and made peace with it, when I show up in an argument with my husband or a child, or I'm challenged by something, I'm going to come at that issue at that age wherever the trauma took place.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. I love working with children and teenagers in the sense that their trauma isn't old. Right? I'm 46 and I went back to, a 3-year-old. That's I've been holding on to that a long time where, I get a 9-year-old or a 16-year-old and they so quickly catch on. They're so smart. I'm like shocked. Actually, I'm not shocked. I know how beautiful and smart these kids are. And so I love it. They get it, like immediately get it. And it's funny because I'll actually have a couple of the older teenagers who will say, oh, that's so funny. I've seen my dad act like a 10-year-old. That's why he says things like that. That's why he acts that way. They actually pick it up more than the adult. Yeah, we don't want to. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to see it. I don't want, my kid to go to therapy because it might come out that I had a bad day, right? But it's okay that we had a bad day. The best thing we can do for that child is let them process that bad day. That's it.
And she's so good with babies and kids. I've had both of my kids come see her. And Michaela, it's so amazing how they can pick up exactly. They'll tell you a color they see. They'll tell you, it's impressive. Well, and especially when they have they're
incredible.
Yeah, it's really, really impressive.
It's very fun.
I think that the trauma is extremely real, but I think one of the things that I've seen over the years where suicide and suicide attempts is, and I'm just speaking from my own, I think that we like to put it in a box because then we're safe from it. So if we just focus on it's just trauma, then I think we discount that it might not be because of trauma. It might be because my brain is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And
absolutely.
And so I think that sometimes stops us from medication.
Correct.
When you have the really overzealous, pray it out, you'll be fine. Okay. I believe in Jesus wholeheartedly, and I am praying, and I'm also taking medication. So
Amen.
I think that is one of the things that we do with the subject of suicide is, like I said, when, my grandma, her sister took her life. And my entire grandma's life that I knew her, it was, I have no idea why. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. She had a husband. She had kids. And again, back then you didn't talk about it. You didn't try and figure it out. You just left the unknown to where it was. So I think that that's always the part that I catch myself is don't put it in a box, and be watching for it. And, sometimes you need medication to get yourself over a hump, and that's okay. I personally am a lifer. I'm just going to take it. I'm not going to try and wean myself off of it. I like this normal.
Yeah.
And you have to find
medication so wrong. I had somebody very personal to me disclose through this last 11 weeks that she went to her parents when she was 14 or so and was having issues and wanted to be medicated, wanted to get help. And she did seek help with the help of her parents, found her way to a therapist. And when that therapist suggested medication, while the parents knew that she needed help, that stigma was like they wouldn't allow it until she was old enough to make the decision for herself. She worked with that therapist to get herself on medication. So there's a lot of these, and even as vocal as I am about what we're going through, I find myself subscribing to some of the stigma and the tabooness of it. And I have to catch myself because I begin to worry about what everybody else thinks. Right. And I'm trying to be a voice and an advocate, and it's happening to me as well.
I would love to actually step into that. So Kelly knows me pretty well and knows that I'm very much a naturalist and a naturopath. And I will tell you that when I was back at the beginning of my therapy, I called Wayne one morning and said, I am coming out of my skin. Like, I don't want to live in this skin. I can't. And for about 2 months, I couldn't take a shower in my shower. I took a shower outside in the hose. And this was me starting medication because it takes a little while the medication to get into your system. And people would tell me, oh, if you feel tired, it made me feel weird, get off it. And I was like, luckily for me, I had a friend who was on the similar medication and she said, you got to wait it out. And so it was about 6 weeks, but I did. I took a shower outside of my hose. I sat on my couch. I was afraid for a movie to start. I was afraid for a movie to end. I was afraid for my kids to come home at 3:00. I was afraid for the phone to ring. Like, I was afraid to go in my room. And it was a very, very scary time. And I'm so glad, I'll tell you, the day that medication started working, I was a completely different person. I could function. I could drive. I could do everything normal that I wasn't able to do for so long. And I was able to wean off, and I was off for several years. And then I started to have symptoms come back. And I'm just going to mention this because I think it's very important for women to understand, especially my age. I started feeling anxiety and having some of this muscle memory is what they call it, or body memory. And I thought, oh my goodness, am I getting back into this crazy town? I'm going to go crazy again. I'm going to spend a lot of time on my couch and with my hose outside. And I went to see my doctor, and actually I was starting perimenopause. Perimenopause, one of the symptoms, or a couple of the symptoms, I guess, are anxiety, depression. And so I talked to my doctor and he said, I'm so glad you're here because so many women, they discount it. Yeah. Or ignore it, or they're not getting the support they need. Like, their husband's like, what's wrong with you? Or they hide it. And he said, I'm just so grateful you're here. And the best thing would be, and it's totally up to you, is to go back on the medication you were on while you get through it. And I was like, no, same thing, same stigma. And about a month later, I'm like, oh no, I need it. I can't do this. I'm not functioning. And today, Julie can drive and smile, and I feel normal and good, whatever normal is, I guess.
Yeah,
but
right.
I feel good. I can live.
And I want to say real quick for our listeners that, I hear you and I feel you, that if you are all squeamish because you think we're advocating medication across the board,
no way.
That's not what we're saying.
No.
and that this is an opportunity.
Do what you need to heal.
Do what you need to do to heal and to stay whole, or to get back to whole. Whatever that, there's so many different modalities, so many different angles and ways to do this. And Karianna mentioned at the beginning, really we can Google just about anything now and find free information and free training. There's books, there's audio cassettes. They even have now very effective therapy that's either phone therapy, right? So you don't have to be in the same room with somebody. You name it. So wherever it is that you're struggling in life, what we're saying is, let's stop making that wrong. We all are broken.
Yep.
We're all broken.
Yes. I think the biggest piece from that is that you took that step. You went to the doctor. That's the piece that I want our listeners to tag on to. Yes, maybe medication is a part of it, but you have to be able to take that first step, whatever that step is. Talking to a doctor, talking to a friend, which is something I want to direct towards you ladies. What is that first step? You know, we see so many different pieces. We see that mom that discounts the kid and goes, oh, they're just a kiddo going through school. We have that husband that we mentioned. Oh, why are you grumpy? So how do we support people in whatever that first step is?
I think it doesn't hurt to ask.
Mm-hmm.
It does no harm to say, you know, is there something else going on? Is there, when somebody comes to you and says, I don't know what's happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a great life. I love my life. And yet my brain keeps telling me to die. It's terrifying. It's scary, but you've made the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's go find help. And let's go find the help that says, you know what? When you meet with a therapist and the therapist says, hey, you know what? Medication and therapy together at first gets us there faster. You know, if you go to a therapist and they say, oh, I'm not really, I don't really want you to try anything else. Just stick with this. To me, that's a red flag. You know what? I'm going to go do all the things and make all the things work. And the things that don't work, I'll start sloughing off. But you don't get to decide what's not going to work for me yet. So I think that just being willing to listen and to say, I can't fix this, but I can keep you safe for now.
And I'm here with you, and you're not alone in this, and we can do this together. And
And I will say that our experience with my husband recently, be listening for the person who jokes about suicide.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I'll use the term, smart enough not to have that conversation with me. He never joked about it with me. But now that I've looked back at text messages and emails and had conversations with many friends and family members, the warning signs were there. And nobody came to me and said, hey, I mean, they did, but it was within days of his act. But he would joke, hey, nothing that a bullet can't take care of. Or, yeah, I'm going to take the cowardly way out. And there were enough people that he had reached out to in the course of 4 or 5 months that had someone, and maybe it would have taken more than one person because he is a jokester and that's how he handles things. But listen beyond, and then I'm going to look at Julie and have her pipe in too, because I have a feeling that you have some things we can look for as well when someone is going through a traumatic experience. Just trust your gut and your heart when you have someone that you care for, even if it's a neighbor that you don't see very often, but you notice something's changed. Just asking, as Kelly said, and Karianna said, how are you doing? And I'm here for you. What can I do to help you? What do you think, Julie?
I totally agree. I saw many people in my quest to getting better, some incredible, from a Chinese medicine to energy work and different things, and every single part of it helped with
what
my
you needed
healing.
right then.
The truth is that it is such a quiet, and I'll call it a disease because suicidal thoughts and those feelings, it's like a disease. And I just look and I think it's quiet. It is quiet. And you do have to pay attention. And that's the thing, is that the most important thing is that we watch the people around us, right? The most important people for me right now would be the ones under my roof. So my husband and my children. And then my mom, right? Because I spend a lot of time with my mom and whoever I'm talking to. But I feel like if we're connected ourselves, we have to start with us, right? It's that thing like, I probably should get a massage and take care of myself because I'm really stressed out. And then we go, well, that sounds really selfish and I shouldn't do that. No, you absolutely should do that. Mm-hmm. You should go to the gym. You should read a book. You should go to the beach. Do those things that your body and your spirit are asking for. Because when we don't and we quiet them, then we sit in this pain. And so, paying attention to those around us. If I'm aware, I'm going to be aware of the ones around me. That's why I always say I love moms like Kelly. And I have a lot of moms that call me. And, some don't come. And a lot of it is they don't want to be responsible for their child's trauma or their child's anxiety or their child's depression or their child's attempt at suicide. They don't want to be the ones. And we kind of got to get to a place where it's okay if we are.
Yes.
We just want them to heal.
Yes.
100% yes. And there's people, and if they don't, then what? That's
Right.
the worst part. If I didn't do something, if my son or my daughter's struggling with anything and I didn't do something about it, then it is my fault. It's not my fault in the beginning.
Mm-mm.
It's a trauma. Oh my gosh, accidents happen or this
We're all
happened.
flawed. In our human experience, we're all flawed.
Right.
That's part of the deal we sign up for when we landed here on Earth, right? I can think of one of my kiddos when he was going through difficulty and agreed to finally get into some therapy. I went to the therapist in my own session and laid it out on the table. Like, look, I know you're going to get there at some point. So for part of my healing, and if he doesn't bring it up, I want, and I mentioned that I used to rock him before he could even speak, talk, walk. He was, just weeks old, that I actually was having postpartum depression. I know that contributed. I didn't do that on purpose, but I know that contributed. I can tell you there were examples and times that in my parenting with all three of my kiddos that I made mistakes.
We all do.
But we all do. And being able to own it and ask for forgiveness with myself first, and then either speak to a professional, work through that trauma, and also have those candid conversations with our kids when the time is right and when it's age appropriate. But I'm saddened to hear that you'll speak to parents and they'll see the value in who you are, Julie, as, can I call you a therapist? Is that a mentor,
No,
a trauma
I'm actually
mentor?
a guide or a mentor.
A guide or a mentor. So a trauma guide or mentor. But that you would actually have calls and emails from folks who see the value enough to give you a call and then choose not to have their child work with you. I hope that if you're, you might be one of those people that you would think about it a second time and reach out again, whether it's Julie or some training online or some other modality. Again, it may take several different versions of whatever you're trying. I think we're all saying that. I mean, I've made it a lifetime of just finding new ways of taking better care of myself. And it's work in progress. I'm sure I'll keep doing this for years to come.
We keep hearing self-care. We keep hearing that word, right? It is a necessity, absolute necessity for mental health awareness, for suicide prevention.
Regardless of gender, age,
Exactly.
religion,
Yes.
socioeconomic status, we all have to take excellent care of ourselves.
We have to do the prevention ahead of time before it's too late.
And I'm going to say it's not just nutrition, although that's very important. It's not just physical exercise, obviously important. Spirituality and soulfulness, that's important. It's imperative. We're finding that there's not just one brain in our body, right? We're hearing more and more that there's three brains: our gut, our heart, and our mind. And we've been taught, especially in the US, that most of our thinking and showing up in life happens where? From our shoulders up, in our head. That's how we've been conditioned in this world. And the reality is, we've got to pay attention to not only our heart and how we're feeling and learn how to navigate through emotions and be able to make sense of them, but also our gut is a big part of how we navigate through life.
You see that show up a lot.
I do. I feel like maybe I should just share one thing that I do with each client that comes is I do have them lay on my table. Well, if they're comfortable with that, they can also just kick back in my recliner. And I do what I call is body love. Kelly has experienced this before. And we'll start at the feet. And now I want you to imagine your husbands, your dads, your grandpas. I do have them on my table, as well as many beautiful women, wonderful women and kids. And I start them at their toes. And we start with, I love my toes. I love my toes. And they repeat after me, I love my toes. It's really interesting because a lot of them start giggling. And I just start, I expect the giggling. I know it's going to happen. But as we connect, as they connect with their body, all I'm doing is guiding them through their body. Because sometimes we just don't even think. Do we even think about our feet? No, not unless they're hurting. We don't. So I love that I just have them go through, and honestly, by the time they get to their hips, they're loving their body. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say I have had a couple people who could not love their body. That's a red flag to me. Mm-hmm. They could not love it. And so, of course, I mean, just so you know what I do, I guide them through, I want to love. I want to love my thighs. I want to love my hips. And it's definitely certain parts of them. And you can feel their pain. And
Julie,
I just
when
think,
you're doing that with people, so self-talk is huge, right? Our mindset is everything. And what we say to ourselves, what you think about, you bring about, right? So that's what you're talking about. So for somebody listening, and they couldn't see themselves having that conversation. Some of the things that I do with clients is have them look in the mirror and have those conversations with themselves.
That's beautiful.
This is who I am, that sort of thing. Can you tell us psychologically or what's happening for us when we're repeating that? We're changing.
We are absolutely changing. It becomes a truth. So it is true, right? I do love my body. Have I forgotten? Probably. Do I even think about it? Probably not. So this is a reminder of, these are the things this is a truth. So when we repeat a truth, it can't help but stick within us, right? If we repeat a lie, that lie is going to go away. So for instance, I'm just going to bring a little bit of the trauma work in, which is when going through with a client with their trauma and they have a trauma, they may say, my leg feels heavy. My head feels heavy. I have pain in my shoulder. My finger feels weird. Those are all lies because it's a memory that is stuck in our body, right? And you may think, oh my gosh, my neck hurts right there all the time. Well, was I in a car accident? Does this have anything to do with, what am I holding there? Is it physical sometimes? Absolutely, it's just physical. But sometimes it's not. It's a stress, it's a memory, it's shock that is stuck there. And so because we're now in 2020 and I'm not in 1980, it's a memory. So it's a lie. The lie is I'm not really still feeling that. And so that's what I'm saying. So if you repeat a lie, it goes away. That pain and that feeling will go away. And that's what I get to guide people through. And they'll go, and I'll say, so what are your thoughts or feelings now? And they're like, my finger's not hurting anymore. I'm like, right. Because it really wasn't hurting in the first place. It was just a body memory. It's your body remembering.
Education is key. You're teaching people how to show up in their body and their mind and spirit differently.
Yeah. It's amazing. And that's what I told them. It's every one of us can do it. Mm-hmm. It's just nice to have someone hold your hand and walk you through it, which I'm so grateful to be able to do for people. I absolutely love it. I will tell you, I think it is an amazing thing to do for our children and our spouses. I always, after I do the body love with someone, I'll say, go home and do this. This is a great connection between you and your partner, between you and your child. And not only is teaching your child or your husband to love and allow them to do that to you also. I get pretty in depth and I'll get into organs and everything, but you don't have to. It can be very basic, but it really brings that awareness, that validation and that love, and people feel it and you know it.
And this, I'm thinking about Karianna and all the work that she's done on behalf of our schools and our teachers and our families and our churches. These are those pieces that we've cut out of education.
Yes.
And there's many educational institutes, especially public education, that this woo stuff,
right,
with air quotes, has never been part of our education. And I'm a former teacher in Kyrene and an assistant principal years ago. I was fortunate to grow up in schools that this was part of our education. But our teachers are so pushed to teach the test and to reach all these requirements, that opportunity to really get to know a kiddo from a soulful perspective and not just from shoulders up to the top of their head, there's less and less opportunity there.
I think that the tide's going to shift.
I agree.
I think that we're all realizing that we have a voice and that we can all have a voice at the table, and you don't have to be a professional to be an advocate. Mm-hmm. You can just be a mom on a mission. You can be a dad on a mission. And it's about caring, like you said, you care about those in your home, but you also have to care about those around you. And so I think that you already have that in teachers. They already want that.
Mm-hmm.
You have that in, your volunteers in Sunday school. You already have that. And so if we can just trust one another, that we are really, the majority of us are really truly looking out for one another for no other reason than to help you be your best self.
And you started the segment with that, a version of that. I love that full circle because we're getting ready to wind down the conversation.
I love that.
Be your best self. And to your point, we lost somewhere along the way, we lost knowing how to trust and care for each other because we were told it was none of our business or we didn't want to take too much on.
Right.
That's what we're saying, though. Listen, it's okay to ask how somebody's doing. It's okay to say, I can't fix this for you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I'm here for you and we can get through this together.
And I have one more thing that I wanted to mention before we close that I just absolutely love. So I have an app called Safety Plan, and you can download it on whether Apple or I can't for some reason think of the other one right now. Thank you. But it gives you warning signs, coping strategies, reasons to live, your contacts, your places for distraction. All of this is stuff that you put in. It's your personal safety plan. And the reason why I love it is because I might not have a chance to walk through something because I can't get an appointment somewhere, but I have all of this at my fingertips. And it also has crisis, and it has one dial emergency numbers. And we are getting a 988. I believe it's 988,
Yep.
which
So great.
will be amazing.
Yes.
You put in your phone numbers of the people that you know that say, hey, Karen, if I can't pick myself up, I'm calling you.
You're on that list for me.
And so it's at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's got amazing reminders for you. Places for distraction are places that you love. You put them in there and it'll take you back to that moment.
The name of the app again?
It's called Safety Plan and it's blue and white.
Cool.
And it's my favorite.
Everybody
I
needs
love
to know about
Yes.
that. Oh my gosh.
That's the thing. Let me just tell you what I really love about that is that, like I said before, I didn't feel that I had, like I could be a person, I could see myself back then hearing that and going, well, not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if we all do it,
Yep.
then it's in place. It's not because we're saying, yes, this is going to happen, but we never know
Correct.
what is going to shift in our life and what is going to happen. So if we have those things in place, I love that. Not to mention you're doing it. And then when we do something, we share it.
Yes.
So thank you. I love that.
Parents for Suicide Prevention, where can we find you?
You can Google us. Mitch Legacy is also another way to find us. We weren't sure which one would take off, Mitch Legacy or Parents for Suicide Prevention, but we thought that Parents for Suicide Prevention, because it's just
Speaks to everybody.
for moms.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were like, okay, dads, we need you. Grandparents, we need you. We need everybody.
It's
who's a parent.
everybody.
Yes. And so you can find us any of those ways because we are here.
ParentsSuicidePrevention.org.com. Do you remember? Okay.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't do the website.
But it's a
sorry.
beautiful
We can Google.
logo. It's a beautiful winged logo.
One of our members, she's an artist. So
Yeah.
she made the wings for us.
Thank
I
you
think
for
we
all
all
you're
want a
doing.
shirt.
Right.
Yes, thank you. It's, you know what? We're going to save our kids and we're going to save our loved ones. And the other voices that we need to bring to the table are our survivors.
Mm-hmm.
We need
for
to hear
sure.
from them. We need to hear from them what we missed.
That's my prayer and
Oh,
hope
yes.
as it relates to Mike, but it's
Yep.
got to be his journey, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're having an event coming up February 6th at Max 6 where Karianna and Julie will be on a panel because we want to talk about this. We want this to be a topic that continues to be talked about and to bring to light for everybody. So we hope our listeners and everybody in the community will join us February 6th. 5:30 to 7:30 at Max 6. We'll start putting stuff on Facebook and sending out emails.
So I hope you
look
guys will share it too, right?
and
Yeah,
have
of
everybody
course.
share it to come hear this again, to come ask the questions. What's the
Yes.
burning questions? What do we need to know? What are we missing? What are we not talking about? What needs to be heard, right? Some of the stuff that I know we didn't get to today will be brought up at that panel. So we want the conversation to be continued. So any listeners, please, reach out to any of us. Julie, how can they reach you?
So I am at JMG Consulting, but it's My Healing Within and myhealingwithin.com. You also could reach me at JMG Consulting 365 at gmail.com.
Thank you both for everything you're doing.
Thank you for giving us a voice at the table.
Yes, thank you.
And Karen, we know how to reach you.
Yes. Here at Phoenix Business Radio X.
We know how to find you. Well, thank you, ladies. It's amazing to be able to wrap up an hour and have Kelly and I sit here and go, wow, we didn't even say anything. We didn't even ask anything. We didn't have to go off of any questions or, that the conversation has to happen. And it has to happen. It has to happen more frequently. It can't just be 60 minutes on a show.
Yes.
It has to happen all the time. And Karen has seen through this whole process, when you talk, you open up, you let people in on what's going on. Most of the people you talk to, they have a connection with somebody who has either attempted suicide or they helped through suicide or accomplished it, or, there's that connection no matter who you talk to. And so we have to make this a conversation that happens more often, that happens more freely. We take away that taboo. Karianna, you said the tides are turning. We have to make those tides turn, though.
Correct.
We can't wait for them to turn. So thank you. It was amazing having you ladies here, and we'll have you on the 6th.
Could I add one more thing before you close out the show, Kendra?
Yeah.
For our listeners, we're talking about this event that's coming up very, very soon. But on Phoenix Business RadioX network, or the greater Business RadioX network, these podcasts are on our network forever. So if you're listening to this and it's past our February date in 2020, that doesn't mean you've missed the opportunity. We are hoping and working, as Kendra mentioned at the beginning of this segment, on having many more of these conversations. And it might not be the three of us as guests. It could be a different set of professionals or a survivor or somebody who's lost a loved one. We want this conversation to continue. So if you have someone to suggest, or you want an approach or a topic for us to touch base on, we know that we've just scratched the surface here. We know that I think we all thought we'd go in a different direction today, but we're going to trust that this was the right conversation to kick this off, and we are open to suggestions so that this becomes, to Kendra's point, a conversation that happens, and we begin to shift the way that we are showing up on behalf of our loved ones.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, ladies. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from within the Mac 6 in Conscious Capitalism, Arizona, Business RadioX studio. Some media leans left, some lean right. We lean business. And today we learn towards supporting others and bringing this conversation to light more frequently. Please be on the lookout. Like we said, there is that event that's going to happen on February 6th. But more importantly, share these conversations and have these conversations. Until next time, this is Kendra Maples. Thank you for listening.